Welcome to the 2022 ManCave Fatherhood Summit. As I was driving this morning, I had in my mind what I was going to talk to you about for 10 minutes with regard to our program, and then all of that changed. It's funny how your spirit can move and change directions on you. So, ManCave. Men all need to be caring, actively engaged, vested, and encouraged. That is what our program is about. It's about caring men, being actively engaged, taking ownership for not only their life but their families, but we also know that we need to encourage them along the way. That's ManCave. Fatherhood. When we talk about fatherhood, we're speaking directly to fathers. We're speaking directly to men. We're speaking to male role models. We're speaking to grandparents, uncles, pastors, coaches, mentors, all of those things when we talk about fatherhood and wanting to bring them alongside and increase their ability or enhance their ability to be able to engage not only with their families but specifically with their children. ManCave Fatherhood Summit. When you think about summit, there's a few things you can think about. You can think about the summit being the highest point on a mountain that you got to climb up to get to. It's not easy to get there. It's rewarding once you get there. That's one definition of a summit. The other is a group of leaders that come together just to talk about issues related to their leadership or related to a specific topic. And then you have the other one, which is a meeting. And it's a meeting of individuals who deeply care about a subject. And that is what we've come here today for. This is a meeting. It's not a conference. A conference is us coming and just sharing information with you and you leaving with information. But this is a summit. It's an opportunity to share. It's an opportunity to talk back and forth. When I put it all together, it looks like this. As the project director for ManCave, and if I didn't say it before, I am Marion Hill. As the project director for ManCave, it is our desire to get to the highest level of serving men, of serving fathers, of creating a safe, transparent venue or atmosphere where we can come together and we can encourage one another, but we can also educate, inform, and give an opportunity for discussion around fatherhood, what it means to be a father. That's the highest level that we want to get to. But I can't get there on my own. Have you ever seen anyone climb a mountain, a summit, straight up, as high as you can go and do it by themselves? No. They have people that go along with them. It's a team that goes along. They have to work together with one another. When they get to places where it seems a little bit hard to get through, it takes a team effort to get through that. You are here as leaders. You are here as individuals who are interested in fatherhood. There's parents here, there's fathers here, there's mothers here. I, in this place right now, not only project director, but I am a man. First of all, I'm a husband and I'm a father. I say that as I'm a husband because I'm a little nervous right now because this is the first time in 6 years since we've been doing ManCave that, my wife is here. So I got to act like I have some sense today. So it is us together doing this. The number for a gift, I love numerology. The number for a gift is 5. Does anybody know why it's 5? It's 5 because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers on my hand. When I give you a gift, I'm giving you with an open hand, with all 5 fingers. When you are receiving this gift, you are receiving it with an open hand, all 5 fingers. You can't give a gift with your hand closed. You can't receive a gift with your hand closed. What I'm saying is that we are here to work together to create an opportunity where men, and specifically boys and girls, can thrive because fathers are engaged. We want to bring about and teach men healthy parenting skills. We want to create the opportunity for men and for fathers to be involved in healthy relationships, healthy marriages, healthy relationships. We want to give opportunity for economic mobility, for movement. All of those things are things that we want to accomplish, and it cannot be done alone, but you have to open your hand. We all work in different programs, and sometimes we're in those programs and they're silos, and when someone else comes along and says, hey, can I help? How can I help? Or, hey, I've got a program over here that I think can help you. We have this closed hand and want to operate in this silo because we feel like someone is coming in to steal our program, or we feel like someone is coming in to take something from us. That's not what we're about. We're about coming along beside you, partnering with you for the benefit of male role models and fathers, to the benefit of children and families. I'm asking you, I'm challenging you today, open your hand. And when you open your hand, be involved, be present, be here, ask questions, have discussion. That's what we are here to do. Open your hand, because we have a gift to give you. I surround myself with men and women that are about impact and making a change. Look, ManCave is good. I won't deny that. We're good. We're good at what we do. We're good facilitators. We're good at going in and facilitating conversation with men. We're good at going in and facilitating conversation with husbands and wives. Yeah, we're good. But that's not good enough for me. For me, ManCave needs to be great, because at the level of greatness is where the impact is. That's where lives change, is at greatness. And that's where we want to get to. And that's where we want you to partner with us to get there. So we're giving you this gift. I'm asking you to receive it with an open hand. Let me close with this, and then I'll have Patty coming up. Just a little bit, something that you don't know about me. Like, I am a nut for K-dramas. Everybody know what a K-drama is? Some do. So it's a Korean drama. Korean dramas. They run like 16 episodes, and whoo, you want to talk about a roller coaster ride? Take you up, down, plots, change in and out. Like, I will watch a K-drama before I watch American TV. My wife will attest to that. And in the K-drama, the one thing that I like about it is that when they come in and when they speak to one another, or when they come into somebody's office, they bow as a greeting to say hello, but when they leave the presence, they bow. And the bowing is showing respect. It's showing honor. It's wishing blessing and wellness into your life. And so as I go on, and you'll see me all throughout, we've got all kinds of swag and everything for you here today. When you leave this place over the next 2 days, you are going to know that you have been in the presence of ManCave. You are going to know from talking with individuals around here that you have been in the presence of greatness. And so to that, Patty.
So then I should bow to you, right? Right? Okay. All right. Good morning. I'm so glad to see all of you here, and those of you that are virtual, welcome. This is, as Marion said, our 6th annual, which I can't believe it's been 6 years already. But every year, I am honored by being asked to speak to all of you men, and women that are here too, but this is a guys' event. And it always makes me reflect back on my own childhood. It makes me think about whatever the topic is. And this year the topic is a father's love. The one thing that I knew as a child was my dad loved me. I never questioned that. My mom loved me. Now, I'm pretty sure there was times they were a little upset with me because I wasn't the perfect child. But I never questioned their love for me. And that's one thing that made me who I am today, because I never had to do anything special for their love. They loved me unconditionally. And I think that's what children need. They need to be loved unconditionally. They make mistakes. That's how we learn. And we need to praise them when they do things that are really wonderful. And so when I was growing up and would do different things, my mom and my dad would say, my mom would say, I'm proud of you. And you know how moms are. She would give me kisses and hugs and all that kind of stuff. And my dad, he would hug me and he'd say, I'm proud of you. And when he did that, that raised the bar for me. Because when you have a dad's approval and they like what you did, that just, for me, that just raised me right up and helped build my self-esteem. And so children, and even as we get older, if you think about yourself, you still want to please your parents, don't you? You still want to do things that make them proud. And so when we praise our children, I made sure that my husband and I praised our own children, and we let them know that we were proud of them. But then as I grew into an adult and I went into the education field, I'm a product of good job. And we always said, good job, good job, good job. I can say to all of you right now, good job, guys. Do you know what I'm saying good job for? Because you're sitting in your seat, because you're paying attention. You don't know what I'm saying good job for, right? We need to be specific about our praise. When we tell a child good job, or I'm proud of you, we need to say, I'm proud of you because, or you did a good job doing this. The one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to overdo it. We don't want children to constantly be doing things and looking over their shoulder to look for approval from you to make sure they're doing a good job, right? We want them to be self-confident, and we want them to build esteem. So one way I do that, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter who loves to draw pictures. I have no idea what these pictures are. I live in a multi-generational house. There's 8 of us, age 4 to 64. That would be my husband. And so I came home the other day, and she's unfortunately sick with whatever's been going around. But she said she drew me a picture. Now, it was on purple paper, and my daughter said it's multimedia because it was chalk and glue. I have no idea what this picture was. But the one thing I know is, first of all, I thanked her for the picture because she thought of me and drew it with intent. Secondly, I didn't say I love it because I don't even know what it is. And so I asked her, I said, tell me about this picture. And she told me that with the chalk, there was a fence on the top, and then there was raindrops, and the glue was rainbow. Now, I would have never gotten that out of that. And I said to her, I said, you must have really worked hard on it. And she said, yes. She said, I did the fence at the top first, and I made those lines, and then I coughed. And then I made the raindrops, and then I coughed some more. And then I did the glue, and I coughed some more, whereupon I kind of slid the paper away from me just a little bit. But the thing is I asked her to tell me how she came up with that. And I didn't give my approval or anything like that. I let her explain what she did. And when she walked away, she was so proud because she told me how she came up with it. We need to let children use their critical thinking skills and explain how they've done things. All of you have probably done something. I mean, especially something around the house. You guys always have honey-do lists, right? My husband always has a honey-do list. Yesterday he painted. I'm so happy. But the thing is, you know, you work all day on it, and somebody looks at it and goes, wow, that looks good. Good job. And then they walk away. And you're kind of deflated, aren't you? Because you're thinking to yourself, I took a lot of time to do that. You know, I had to think about this. Maybe this didn't work out right. I had to adjust. And children are the very, very same. We need to make sure that we acknowledge their thought process and what they go through to get the end result. Because the end result isn't where they learn. It's the thought process and the process they go through to get there. So I encourage you, when you're with your children, I don't care how old they are, praise them, but be specific about their praise. I like the way you did this, or I like the way you did that. And now I'm going to introduce someone that I respect greatly and often gives me praise and gives me specific praise. Marshall Franklin is the director for the Human Services Department, which is where our Head Start is housed. And she's a great leader and very inspirational. And I'm hoping that she has a story about her dad. We need to bow. We need to bow.
Oh, we did. That's right. I forgot. You started this now.
We need to bow.
Everybody has to bow now. So, and you set the stage. So I'll come stand over here. I keep forgetting we have individuals who are here virtually. So good morning to everyone. So pleased to be in front of you this morning. And it is so good to see all of you all. Even though sometimes I tell this little joke, typically people don't sit up front. So I honor you 4 gentlemen who chose to sit up front. So let's give them a hand clap because everybody else is in the rear of the room. And sometimes I tell people you may want to sit up front because sometimes there are $20, $50, and $100 bills underneath the seats of those who are front. Now, that's not happening this morning. I'm going to let you know. That would happen when I worked in my private sector days. You know, we work for government now, and many of you are for nonprofits, so money is lean. But nonetheless, thank you, Patty, for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate you, Marion, appreciate you and all that you're doing. And so I won't keep you very long. I do want to share a couple of things. So the reason why education in our education division is so very important to me, in particular, is we recognize that our children, our seeds, as we call them, are our next generation. And if we're not pouring into them in a way that's meaningful, we don't have a future. Secondly, I'm always humbled and excited to be at the ManCave Summit because we really have to make sure that we are continuing to lift our men up. You all are the backbone. You are the foundation of families. You all are leaders. You were designed with shoulders to be carrying and leading and encouraging our families. And so I am so honored to be here to celebrate you and to honor you for being here in this time and in this space. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't honor and celebrate our women that are here. Like Marion says, it's clear he's a man, it's clear I'm a woman. But we play a role, but men really, really play a role. And I believe we have to be very real and honest about that. I've been reading a book called The Healing Wisdom of Africa about culture, about ritual, and about healing. And in that book, if you think about our ancestors, and we all have our ancestors and the ancestral lands that they come from, some of which we're standing on ancestral land right here, and you think about community and tribal community, the men were the leaders and are the leaders. The men were the nurturers. They were nurturers in terms of ensuring the family had food, ensuring the family had clothing, ensuring family had roof over their head. But when you study our ancestors and tribal community, one of the things that they make very clear is the tribe and the community can only be as strong as its children. Only as strong as its children. And so when you think about some of the challenges that our children are facing today, and as I've been doing some introspection my own self, I believe it's because we've lost community and we've lost the fact that we need men, fathers, to be leading our communities and to take their rightful place in community. Now, it's shifted for a whole host of reasons, which I won't get in here because there's a whole lot of other experts who are in the room that can speak much more intelligently than I can about that. But I firmly, firmly believe that this is a call, as Marion said, to our fathers to step up if you have not stepped up, to remain present if you're remaining present, and for all of us to do what we need to do to learn, enhance, and grow in how we parent and how we lead our children and how we lead our families. I, like Patty, have a father still, he's still with me, praise God, who loves me, and I know that unconditionally. I am 57 years old, and in this moment, if I called my daddy and I said, I need you, he would stop whatever he is doing to come take care of his daughter. What confidence that gives me, what faith that gives me, what assurance that gives me to know that no matter what goes on in this world and no matter what I'm dealing with, my daddy is there for me. Now, like Patty, I done had some moments when I'm sure he used a whole lot of four-letter words because, you know, I got my own issues. I just saw Natalie. Hi, Natalie. She knows my dad very well. I know I have not been perfect. He knows he has not been perfect as a parent because there wasn't but one perfect person that walked this earth, and none of us are him. And so when I think about that, and I think about why we're all here, and why I think about the men I see in the room, I hope you know that we don't expect you to be perfect. We do expect you to be brave. We expect you to walk boldly in the position that you have as men, as our caretakers, as our fathers, as our leaders, as our nurturers. We do also expect that we as the community support you, come alongside you, help you with the tools that you need. As Patty and Marion said, encourage you and be specific with you about what it is that you are doing so well as a man and as a father. And so I am truly, truly, truly excited that you all are here. I am so excited to see so many men in the room. And you have my commitment as Marshall Franklin, a person, and as the department head for the Human Services Director, that we will always make a commitment to honoring men, to make a commitment to honoring families. And that's why the city is so supportive of ManCave, why it's so supportive of this fatherhood conference, because the city recognizes the value in our fathers and the value in our men. And so let me close with this one particular encouragement, if you will. I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I know about my dad is that he loves me. I also mentioned earlier that I was not perfect and he is not perfect. And my mother too, let me say my mother too. Love my mother dearly. My parents been married 58 years. So I'm blessed to have both my parents, and I've always had both my parents in my life still to this day. But I want every man to know we don't, again, expect you to be perfect. We do not expect you, nor do we need you to operate as if you need to be perfect, because that's unfair and it's unrealistic and it doesn't honor who you are as a person. And so I want you to know, men, we just need you to continue to walk in your rightful place, that we honor you as heads of households, as heads of families, as individuals who have to help nurture and raise. And I may say something that's a little controversial. I have 2 sons that I have raised, predominantly, if you will, on my own. I am blessed that they are healthy and whole and productive and have great careers and are on their own, so they don't come back home, because I've told them both, can't come back home. Once you leave, you leave. No, I'm teasing. But they're on their own. Genuinely, they're productive. They have their own places. They have good jobs. But I've never feigned to know what it's like to raise a boy to man, because I'm not a man. Men, we need you. We have to have you. And so I've always made sure that I've ensured that there have been men in their lives that can help them grow from boy to man. And so thank you for the men, again, who are in this room. I can't thank you enough. My heart is truly warmed, because I embrace, honor, and recognize the role that a man has to play in family and in community. So if you would, every man who is in the room, if you are able to stand, if you would stand for me right now, and for those who are watching, if you're able, if you would stand as well. And I would like for us as the women who are in there, I see every man to stand, thank you, and I need us as women in the room to applaud them and honor them for being here. Even our AV guy over there, we honor you. I know he's doing his job, but we honor you. Oh, okay, yeah, I see both of you all. So thank you for being here. Next on our agenda was to be our mayor, Mayor Kate Gallego, to give you some introductions and greetings. She called me at 6:30 a.m. this morning. For those who may not know, Mayor Gallego is the mayor of the 5th largest city in the nation. Yes, Phoenix is the 5th largest city. She is doing great and powerful and mighty things, but she will tell you her greatest honor is being a mother. So she's the mother of a 5-year-old. He's sick this morning. She called me at 6:30 this morning and was concerned about not being able to be here, and was trying to scramble to find someone to watch Michael for the hours she knew she'd need to be here. Her father, who is typically a backup caregiver, if you will, wasn't available. Michael's dad was not available. And so she was really struggling with what to do. And I said to her, Mayor, everybody that's in this room is a father or mother or grandparent and knows what it's like when you are a professional and you have a sick child. They will understand that you needed to stay home to be with your son. And so she could not be here. She truly, truly, truly sends her regrets. But I will say to you, the mayor is one of the most strongest proponents of and advocates for what Marion is doing with ManCave. Her specific words, because Marion needs to get his props publicly to me, was, and Marshall, will you please make sure Marion knows I'm not bailing on him. I just have a sick child. I am so supportive of what it is that Marion is doing. You're the 5th largest mayor in the city, honoring you, Marion, for what you do. And I know you're not a man that takes accolades and you tend to be behind the scenes, but we need to honor you for what you have done and what you continue to do and how you have taken what God has put in your heart and you're making it happen, and you are making a difference in legacies today and future generations in ways that none of us in this room will ever know. So the mayor wanted to make sure that you knew she honors you, she respects you, she values what you're doing, and she appreciates every one of you that have showed up this morning to say you want to be present and do what you need to do to make yourselves even better in the space we all play in terms of nurturing and growing our next generation. So before I sit down, I'd like to ask everybody, if you would, and you're able to, and those who are watching, to rise one more time, and let's please give Marion a hand clap, and let's honor Marion for what he does. And thank you so very much. And we're joking, but I genuinely bow to you, Marion, and I mean that genuinely. Thank you for all you do. We appreciate you. There we go.
All right, here we go. Hang with us for 2 days. We got a lot going on and a lot to give you. So today, we're going to spend time in the classroom. All right, we got a fantastic keynote speaker that I'm really excited for you to hear. We've got some breakouts, some workshops. Fantastic workshops and speakers that will be presenting. We're in the classroom today. Tomorrow, we're taking a field trip. All right, the field trip is we're going on a journey with fathers. They'll be in front of you. I'm next to one of them here, Sleepy. That's his name, Sleepy. But let me tell you something. You want fire? When Sleepy is done with you, you're going to run out here looking for a father to say, how can I help you? Dr. Michael Campbell will be with us tomorrow as well. I see Thurston back there from the Gentleman's Leadership, Alpha Gentleman Leadership Lifestyle. I see the Dapper Advisor sitting back there. You know how I know these guys? These guys have gone through the Nurturing Fathers program. They have honored me to be able to lead them through this program. And so with that, I want to introduce to you Dr. Kyle Pruett. Dr. Kyle Pruett is an international authority on many aspects of child and parent development, including fatherhood and its effect on children. His latest book, Partnership Parenting, examines the different parenting styles of men and women. While fathers tend to overprotect their kids, or mothers tend to overprotect their kids, fathers tend to push them towards independence. Many experts advocate a united front, but Dr. Pruett argues that mom and dad not always being on the exact same page can actually strengthen the whole family. With wisdom and humor, partnership parenting helps couples take advantage of their individual strengths to raise confident children while simultaneously improving marriage. Dr. Pruett was a consultant to Vice President Al Gore for the White House Conference on Men in Children's Lives and served as president of 0 to 3, the National Center of Infants, Toddlers, and Their Families in Washington, D.C. He sat on the advisory board for father involvement in Head Start and is the head of the International Study Group on Fathers and Child Development. Dr. Pruett has also authored Father Need. I've read that. If you have not read it, you have to have it in your library. Why Father Care is Essential, as Mother Care is your child, as Mother Care is for your child, and hosted his own Lifetime cable series, Your Child, 6 to 12, with Dr. Kyle Pruett. He has been a columnist on WebMD, MSN.com, ParentsEdge.com, and contributing editor to Good Housekeeping and Child and Parents magazines. A consultant for CBS Morning News, he has also appeared regularly on Good Morning America 2020, CBS This Morning, and NPR. Dr. Pruett was chosen by Oprah Winfrey to co-host her acclaimed Begin with Love video distributed to the parents of every newborn child in America in 2008. Ooh, you guys are in for a gift. I give you Dr. Kyle Pruett.
Thank you, Marion. As soon as he takes his seat, I'm going to give him a bow and to all of you this morning. Because this is a classroom and I'm with a teacher, as many of you know. and a remarkably giving man. I'm really happy to be part of this ongoing growth of an idea within a community that, frankly, doesn't have a lot of equals. I spend a lot of time running around the country and talking about dads and co-parenting. And to see a coalition of people who are as concentrated, particularly on the early years, but then spill over into the later years, is unique, and it's also a very promising enterprise. For the reasons that I'm going to talk with you about, my interest in fathering did not begin as a fathering advocate. I frankly think fathers don't really need advocates. They can advocate for themselves. And I think that is one of the problems that we have in our country currently, is that men are feeling like they're, and Marshall, when you were talking about what men need to do, a lot of men sort of began to shrink a little bit in their chairs, because that is a message that men hear frequently. You need to be different than you are. You need to be what I need you to be. I know that's not the way you're talking about it. But for a lot of men who have been told, you're screwing up frequently, I need you to do it differently, it hits a nerve and can actually push the man a little bit further away from where you need him to be, or where you want him to be, or where he can be. So this morning isn't exactly going to be a classroom. As far as I'm concerned, I'll take questions anytime they come up, because I think it's very hard to sit here and listen to somebody jawbone for an hour and a half on things that they think they know better than you do. I don't speak from that position. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a father, grandfather. I was born next state over in New Mexico. Found my father was a minister, a Baptist minister, and he worked his way across the country to Indiana, where I grew up. Went to church 4 times a week, whether I wanted to or not, sang in the choir, and also watched people sit in the back of the pews before they sat in the front. Dad would encourage the people in the back to move to the front because they said they didn't pass the offering plate twice to the people who sat in the front. In the back, they did. And often you would see people move slowly through the service up to the front seats. I have also had the opportunity to have an education that drew me into thinking about what turns children into people. I started in pediatrics and failed because I wasn't very good at well child care. I was more interested in fixing the things that were wrong early. That took me into child psychiatry, and from child psychiatry, I really got interested in infants and infant development, where it all begins. And it's wonderful to be with an organization that honors Head Start and early intervention, because I'm going to show you some science about the importance of how big a bang for your buck when you begin early, as opposed to later. I also have chosen the background for the PowerPoint. Clay didn't point it out, but someone else said, there's water all over your background. I said, yeah, well, I'm going to Arizona where they've had quite a bit lately, and they never get quite enough. So that's my little suggestion that I believe I know something about what it's like to live here, because being in New Mexico, I also began to cherish water from a very early age. So I'm looking forward to this conversation today. There are many people in the audience that I have worked with and known before. It is an honor to be here because this is an ongoing conversation. The science that has emerged since I got interested in this field in the 1980s is frankly mind-blowing. And if you need your science to center a change in bias or belief or conviction, there's plenty now. That was not the case in 1980. And it is not just about white folks. It's also about Native Americans, and it's also about black folks, and it's about non-white people all over the world. And the force of that science is something I want to share with you, because I want you to leave here informed and ready for the small battles that we all need to do if we are really going to encourage the engagement of fathers in the lives of all children. And want to correct something right here from the beginning. When I say fathers, I don't necessarily mean biological dads. I mean the person the mother has partnering with to raise her children. And that can be just about anything you can imagine. So I am really talking more about fathering than fathers per se. Frankly, the science supports that view, because when we look at how families actually raise their children, it's the people that show up to do the work that are the ones that we're interested in studying, and they're the ones that have the influence. Listen, biology helps, but as we tragically know, it does not predict either excellence, success, or failure. Margaret Mead, one of the smartest anthropologists ever, surprised me with this quote. A graduate student I was working with said, "Do you know she said this?" I said, "No, I didn't." And I have no idea what she means by it. She didn't explain it, but it's intriguing, isn't it? Who would have thought that it was the primary task of every society to teach men how to father? It implies that men aren't going to learn it on their own, because the society isn't going to make them do it. It's going to lay it on the mother. She'll get all the credit and all the blame. So, it also might mean that there are some things that are good for society to have men in nurturing roles. And we now know that's absolutely true. Research that I've been involved in and other colleagues now shows that communities that have engaged fathers are less violent, period. That's true in the Middle East, it's true here, it's true in Chicago, it's true in Phoenix. And think about that for a moment. Think about a man who's actually changed a diaper or comforted a crying child or gotten up in the middle of the night. He's on a different path because he's had to take responsibility and make a sacrifice for the well-being of his child. So maybe he's not quite so quick to pick up a gun when he gets pissed off, because he knows there are other things that you can do to resolve conflict. I think it's, frankly, an important insight because of this dynamic. Let me explain this to you a little bit. Co-parenting, when you raise a child together, is very different than coupling systems. You can be a couple without raising a child, and you can be a particular kind of couple and raise a child successfully or not. But co-parenting implies that we all affect our partners in relationship to what we do with the child. And vice versa, the child affects us as partners. Mothers and fathers, that top axis in the upside down triangle. We know, a dad can make a mother feel great or make her feel lousy. The same thing's true for the mother. Mother and child, 98% of all of our child development research has to do, thank you very much, with the effect the mother has on the child. But that arrow goes both directions. The child also has an effect on the mother. If it's an easy child, that mother's going to feel very competent and successful. If it's a child that's got all kinds of troubles, can't sleep, not eating very well, she's not going to feel very competent. The child and the father also have a relationship. The father can also feel the same things the mother. But I'm interested in the traffic in the middle of the triangle. The child affects the father-child relationship as well. As I said before, if it's an easy child, they're going to feel like they know what they're doing and they're going to feel confident and probably have more kids. If the child is difficult and very needy, they might slow down on the number that they were thinking about adding to the population because it's tough work. The father can have a profound relationship on the mother-child axis. He can make it hum along, or he can make it impossible, either through substance abuse or violence or his failure to be anything that ManCave's trying to help men become. The mother can also have a profound influence on the child-father axis. As a matter of fact, she has complete control. Because the baby is in her body, she doesn't need to tell him that he's the father, and she may not. Or she may think he is the best thing since sliced bread, so much better than her father was to her, and thinks that he wants everything that that man can bring into the life of her child. So I know this is a little complex, but we're naive if we think we are talking about families without this picture in the back of our minds. It's a very, very dynamic system. And one of the reasons we have extruded fathers, not only from our societal inclusions and science, is because we have pretended it's all about attachment theory and the dad is an add-on. Let me tell you, children do not feel that way about their fathers from very early in their lives. Little brain science. This is one of my favorite slides because it's a little discouraging to those of us over 6 years of age. But if the axis on the left side, the blue line, drawn from multiple studies of humans and animals, the brain's plasticity is strongest in the first few years after birth. It is easier and less costly to form strong brain circuits during the early years than it is to intervene later. The brain's ability to change in response to experiences deteriorates over the course of our lifetime. That's why we're all conservative after about the age of 80 or 70 or 40 or 50, depending on where you live. We don't often start off that way, but we tend to be, just like our bones, we get a little more brittle and less flexible. That happens emotionally as well as physically. The amount of effort, that such change requires to change a person or to help somebody who's started off behind the 8 ball, it's pretty simple to do if you start early. And I mean early. I mean before the age of 3, preferably, 6, and then when do we put children in school? You know, sadly, they're already on a downslope for plasticity and growth. So starting early, essential. So, involved dads, the goal of ManCare. My definition, kind of like yours, responsible for and responsive to their children. Responsible for and responsive to. They listen. They don't simply direct, shout at, beat, or ignore. Physically accessible. They're physically there. In order for the child to have an effect on the father, which is what I'm going to tell you a little bit about here in a minute, he has to be physically present some of the time. He doesn't have to be present all the time. As a matter of fact, when we look at intervention programs that help fathers who are a little, and families that are a little behind the 8 ball, it helps if the father lives with the mother, but it's not essential. The father can make quite a difference in the life of the child if he's got a reasonable relationship with the mother. Emotionally engaged. I have you in here. I have you in here. I think about you. I worry about when you're sick. I'm happy when you're happy. Reliably, he's a reliable provider. Helps with the family's needs and their resources. Influential in child-rearing decisions. Participates. Not simply responds to the mother, but simply says, watching my boy or watching my girl with that friend makes me think this is not a good friendship. and I don't think we should encourage it. That's participating in child-rearing decisions. But how do children even experience men? Here's some science for you. A few of my favorites that are the least thing, are not things that you would expect. First of all, we know that fathers do not mother. Even when they're single parents, they don't mother. They may try it for a little while, but they give it up because it doesn't work. It's not in their body, it's not in their brain. Mothers don't father. We don't expect mothers to father. We hear all the time, well, you know, I was single parent and I was both father and the mother. But most mothers will tell you, I couldn't, as Marcel did, you told us something about raising your boys, that it helps to have other men in your life that you can bring into those relationships because they'll stabilize some of the identity that boy has. But mothers don't father. The perinatal and earlier behavior, powerful predictor of child health and competence. Okay, what do I mean by that? Hormonal changes before and after delivery in the father. Really? He's not carrying the baby. Why are his hormones changing? Father's hormones, particularly oxytocin, which has the lay name of the relationship hormone, because it's very high when you fall in love, and very high when you're deeply involved in a relationship that's moving you emotionally. And when fathers are around perinatal, around the birth of the baby, they don't necessarily have to be in the birthing room, but it sure helps if they're there. Their oxytocin is at historically high levels. What's it doing there? Well, you've heard a dad say, you know, I was in the cheap seats all during this pregnancy and everything, but when I saw that baby, I knew I'd lay down in front of a truck to save him. And it happened just like that. Well, that's oxytocin speaking, because it says, I am now, this baby grabbed me. I am in love with this thing that is mine. Their testosterone goes down. Don't need a lot of testosterone when you're having a baby. Estrogen goes up. Estrogen is also a female hormone, but it has a softening effect on male behavior. High incidence of paternal postpartum depression increases the risk for the mother and the child. Did you know that for every 2 mothers that have a postpartum depression, there's 1 father? Are we screening for that? No. Should we be? Yes, because a depressed father is a very big piece of baggage for a new mother. And if she happens to be depressed too, then that child is in double jeopardy. We should be screening, it's treatable, and our neglect of it is costing us a lot, and the children who are being born into those situations. Now, it doesn't look the same as maternal postpartum depression. It comes a little bit later. It's not full of a lot of the fulminant emotional, frequent crying, inability to kind of manage emotion. It has more of a sort of deadening, I kind of feel numb, I'm not really myself anymore. But it's very important to diagnose it and treat it because it's easily treatable. Here's one that always surprises me. Father's vocabulary is a stronger predictor than mother's of language competence at 36 months. Really? I actually spoke with a researcher that did this at Duke, and she was as surprised by the data as everybody who read her paper, because she was not looking for that. She was looking for it to be exactly the opposite. Why would that be the case? It's the father's vocabulary, not how much he talks to the kid. But maybe there's something about the expectations that the fathers don't tend to do goo goo gaga as much as mothers do. They tend to speak in more complete sentences and expect something back from the baby. Now, sometimes that drives the mother or the mother-in-law crazy, but it's the baby that gets interested in that interchange because it's a novel kind of speech. Significance of as co-parenting partner in toddlerhood and adolescence. Particularly important for men to be involved, co-parenting positively during toddlerhood and again during adolescence. Why? I probably don't need to explain it to you. Because toddlers, you know, they take families apart because it's all about their needs. Me, myself, and I, that's all I'm interested in here. And it's your job to make sure you fulfill that. And it's exhausting. It's fun, but it's exhausting. Adolescence, those battles over autonomy, particularly with the mother, between the mothers and the daughters. If there's a father also engaged there, that's likely to be less toxic, and they're likely to get through it with less damage. And I put down at the bottom, is this common knowledge? And I would say no, it's not. But this is an example of some of the science that has come out over the last 20 years that says we have got to be taking dad as a resource more seriously if we want our kids to be doing better. Do children really respond directly to men from very early on? How about 6 weeks of age? Michael Goodman, who's a pediatrician in Boston, did a lovely study, split screen videos, mothers picking up babies at 6 weeks, fathers picking up babies at 6 weeks. Plenty of seating right here in the front. Feel free, anywhere you'd like. And there's quite a difference between the way the baby responds to the mother picking up the baby and the father picking up the baby. The mother goes to pick up the baby, and what do you see in the baby's face? Relaxation, heart rate goes down, respiratory rates become regular, and also become less frequently. You know, mom. Dad goes to pick up the baby. 6 weeks of age, okay? Long before we can be talking behavioral influence. The baby's eyes don't close slightly the way they do with the mother. They open. The shoulders hunch. And the heart rate goes up a little bit, like, Dad, party time, or whatever. I don't know what's going on in that baby. But you have to really, it's an inspiring thing to think that there is information in that baby that says, this guy is a little different than her. And maybe it's in your best interest to start learning about those differences. Toddlers use clearer behavior cues to fathers. This drives mothers nuts. The dad will be in the kitchen, the toddler will come in and sort of says, points to G, and the father says, what do you want? And the kid goes over and starts to pull on the refrigerator door and kick it, try to get it open. And the mother's watching this and says, he wants some juice, just give it to him. He's got to say it. Why does he have to say it? Because they're not going to be reading his mind when he goes to college. He has to say it. Well, I'm just going to get it for him. And he opens the door, blah, blah, blah. So the baby's happy, and the father is dismissed and devalued. Because what the father's trying to do is get that ready for the world beyond mother, which is one of his most important jobs. Preschoolers use more advanced speech with fathers. We also see examples of that where they'll work harder. It comes out of this expectation that you speak up for yourself, and then you'll get what you want. Fathers' emotional availability, particularly to toddlers. I want to show this video because it's quite compelling to show what happens. This is a still face experiment that was originally done with mothers to show what happens when a baby has a disrupted interaction with a mother and how upset the child can get. And especially children who are at need can get either extremely upset or they don't get upset at all, which is even more worrisome. But look what happens with the still face with dads.
What we've learned over the years is that babies are much more capable than we initially imagined, but they're also much more vulnerable. And in Edtronic's still face experiment, we get to see both in a very short period. We see the baby and the dad playing together in their routines. There are things that they know about each other and things that they do together, and it's fun. And then we ask the dad to turn away, and when he turns back, to keep his face completely still and not respond to the baby. And the results are almost immediate, and they're devastating. The baby looks to the dad and tries to get the dad to get back into those games. Hey, we were just playing just a minute ago, weren't we? We were having fun. What's going on? And then the baby starts to get frustrated when that doesn't work. So she'll have to look away and look around the room and find something else and then look back and say, now can we play? And within 3 minutes, the baby has really dissolved. She is trying to get out of the chair. She's uncomfortable. She's reaching out to dad. She's crying. And then we ask the dad to turn away again. And when he turns back, to go back to being regular dad. And it's a joyous reunion. They get back into their routines, the things that they do together, the things that they were just doing 3 minutes before. And the baby settles down and gets back to the comfort zone that she's developed with the dad. What we see in the still face experiment is how able the child is to initiate and be part of the relationship between the father and the child, but also how much she depends on that relationship in order to keep an even keel. And when she's grounded and comfortable, she can explore the world. She can meet new people. Hola. She can try new things, and she's got that safe base that she can always rely on. And there's a trust level there. We can only begin to imagine what it's like for babies whose life is like that 3 minutes all of the time. And they don't get that responsiveness, and they don't get any help getting back to an even keel. And the results can be very tragic. They can have trouble trusting people, they can have trouble relating to people, and they can have trouble being calm enough so that they can explore the world and take part in the world. So we know that those initial relationships, that initial responsiveness and interaction between the father and the baby are keys to the baby's success as a child and as an adult.
You've seen it firsthand.
Yeah, well, like when I go shopping So, for instance, when I go shopping at the grocery store, I'm not a fully present father with my children because mother and I don't live together. We're getting back to that. But I'll be pushing the shopping cart with my 1-year-old in the cart. And if I'm looking around at stuff that my girlfriend is, putting into the cart, trying to tally up the cost of things, etc., my son will start to freak out after a couple of minutes because I'm not engaged with him. I'm engaged with his mom. And he will literally start to cry. He'll start to fuss. He'll reach out to me, or he'll try and turn to reach out to his mother because he's trying to get us re-engaged, just like the still face. So it kind of made a lot of sense. Thank you.
Does it work? Does he get your attention? When he, yeah. Which has an effect on the baby, which is, I can have some effect on what's going on here. I exist, and I matter to him, and I matter there, and I am beginning to feel like I have some, it's called agency, which is a fancy word, but it simply means I have substance as a person. I am not invisible. Particularly, I'm not invisible to you. What else? Let's hear from some mothers, whether they believe this can actually happen or not, or it's more likely to happen with them than him. What do you think? Neil Tift in the back.
Yes, sir. Years ago, I saw it on Moms, where they did that still case with Moms. How long did it take between doing that with Moms and recognizing the importance of dads in the same way? Not to put down.
Say it again.
You didn't hear me, huh? Okay. I remember many years ago in a psych class seeing that story about when the baby and the mom, when the mom would turn away and then turn back. I'm wondering why it took so much longer time to recognize maybe it would also be relevant to fathers.
I bet you know.
Well, yeah, you're the smart guy, so.
He does this to me at every conference that we share, okay? Be warned. And we've shared many. Neil, it's great to see you. This pediatrician was influenced by yours truly and some other people. He was the one who went out and did the experiment himself. And it was 27 years between the still face female and the still face male. Change takes time. And this research was done by men. The original research was done by women. And they were not even looking at men. There was no comparison study, which there should have been 27 years ago. So that all we're left with, what's the implication of the first study? Mothers had better stay close to their babies, right? Because if they don't, bad things are going to happen. Another thing, you know, we're going to give mothers all the credit. We're going to give them all the blame. Not helpful to the children who are being raised by families like this. Thank you. Any other thoughts? I had one as I watched this. After the reunion, I thought some of those babies didn't quite believe it yet. Did you see a little doubt in their eyes?
I saw the doubt. It was, and I think it's kind of just like they weren't ready. They were like, well, if that's, how are you really? Like, do you really not care about me? Because you just were sitting there for 3 minutes, not looking at me, and now you turn back to me as if everything's okay. It's not okay. So it's like, what is this?
You got to make this real. I'm glad I saw it too. I hadn't always seen that before. And I think he's a little bit overly positive about what he's seeing here. But I think the babies, they eventually come around. But that's what, you know, what's the basis here? This is the basis of trust. This is where trust begins. Children who are raised in environments where they are without trust. Barry Brazelton, the great pediatrician in Boston, used to say he could tell by the age of 8 months if a child was going to be able to trust people or not. How did he know? Because the 8-month-old is sitting at the high chair and he pushes the food off the edge, and the food goes over the edge. The baby with a trusted relationship looks at the mother or the father or whoever there to pick it up. This is a game I've started, right? The baby without trust does not look after the food and does not look after the parent. It's just gone because there's no belief that the world will respond to my needs. Another question back there?
Yeah, I was really interested in the dynamic you showed with the triangle where moms control fathers' access or interaction to their kids, because I think we all know that works. What advice can you give to dads who have a loving and kind relationship with their children, but they have conflict with the mother and can't access their children to partake in that interaction?
I need to build my case a little bit more before I answer that question for you. Will you be patient with me? you've had a chance to look at this slide since I put it up early. This is one of the more interesting things that has come out of the research that I've been involved in. At least it's interesting to me. And a lot of couples that we work with in our various intervention programs find this information kind of liberating, if a little surprising. There are distinguishing trends between mothers and fathers. Mothers and fathers obviously share a lot more than they don't, but these are some of the things that sort of, this is a male trending, this is a female trending, or a mother trending, or a father trending. By the way, I don't know if it is male or female. I just know it's mother trending and father trending. Because a lot of what I'm talking about, I'm not sure is really related to chromosomal difference. A lot of what I'm talking about has to do with culture and role, and the ways that we are raised, and the cultures in which we are raised. Preference for activation, stimulation versus soothing and comforting. Yes. Fathers tend to want their children activated. Mothers tend to want their children calm. Partly because it's easier to look after them and they're doing a lot of other things, but it also fits their general temperament a little bit more likely. The fathers, however, this shows up in the way that men carry their children in the world. The child who's not walking, the mother generally holds the baby here. The father often holds the baby here, tucked against the side, like, let's see the world together. This is, I will show you the world after I've checked it out. This is, we can handle what comes down together. I'll keep you safe, keep myself safe. Let's go see what's going on. And it is interesting that when you'll see children who wiggle here, don't wiggle here, because this sort of seems to fit their own temperament a little bit differently. And these are not pathological differences, they're simply trends. Unpredictable versus regulating styles. Fathers like to surprise their children. Kid will be on the floor playing with the mother. Some blocks or Legos are out, and pretty soon there's some teaching going on, a little education. But she generally joins the child's play like a tributary that comes in from the side. Father comes in, sits down on the floor, says, well, that looks like fun. Let's do something else. And that's more likely to please him. And it often involves something that's more active and action-oriented. Again, not a problem, integrated well, and you can begin thinking about the advantage to the child of having both experiences as opposed to only one. Preparation for a place in the world versus relationships. I've told this story before. I'm in checkout line behind a mother with I guess to be about a 24, 25-month-old who's in the cart, of course. And they go down the final chute where she's checking out, and there's where all the candy is. So this kid reaches out and starts taking candy and throwing it, in the basket. The mother says, "Stop doing that. We're not paying. We got to get home. I have to cook dinner. Stop. Put it back. Put it back." And the baby may or may not pay any attention. But I happened to follow this woman out because our cars were kind of close together, and she really let that kid have it. She said, "You are never coming shopping with me again. I can't stand when you're like this." And the child gets a little dark and sort of quiet and everything, but the message was, we are not friends when you do not listen to me. Father, similar situation. Put it back. They send people to jail for that around here. And there's no point following him to the car because that was the message. Those are two very important messages. Mothers tend to discipline from the strength of their relationship with the child, emotional relationship. Fathers tend to discipline more from the idea that I have to get this kid ready for the world, the world outside, the world beyond mom. Discipline, real world versus relational adaptation. Already talked about that. Frustration, tolerance versus facilitating. This is something you sometimes see at a city park where a mother and a father and a child might be playing, and the mother is more likely to keep the child on a shorter tether, closer to her, no dogs. that you don't know, and maybe a kid or two if it looks okay to me. Father, let's go see some dogs. That kid looks interesting, and the tether's a little longer. Get your shoes tied in the morning before you go to school. We're late, come on, hon, let's go. Tie his shoes, come on, we gotta go. No, he's gotta have those shoes tied. They're not gonna be tying his shoes when he goes to college. I'm gonna wait him out. Mother feels frustrated because the child is frustrated. The father believes the frustration is a teaching tool and says you have to, the world will not look after you if you can't look after yourself. And the mother is saying, come on, let's make it easy for him. And again, these are just trends. These are not pathological differences and things that we see in so many different cultures in so many different ways that it's hard to sort of say that's a problem for a couple. Different attachment behaviors at different developmental eras. I don't know how many of you, I know Neil Tift had to sit through many classes on attachment theory. I'm here to tell you I think we're in a post-attachment theory era, because what attachment theory did was simply study the relationship between mothers and babies and learn about autonomy, about how the sense of self grows. Those are all very important things to know. But for most families, that's not where children live. They live in a context where there's all kinds of other relationships going on. And there's a matrix of relationships, some great, some not so great. Excuse me. Okay. Specific father-child interactions some that I've already mentioned. The maternal versus paternal comfort-seeking behavior, soothing versus arousal management, the importance of play in paternal care. A lot of things that mothers find irritating is how playful fathers are with their children when they're trying to get some work done, or trying to get ready for bed, or trying to get ready for dinner, and there's the dad goofing off with a kid. And it just really irritates a lot of moms because it interrupts the process. But fathers are actually engaged in their children not just simply around entertainment, but they're teaching them things, rules, what's fair, what's not fair, what happens when you cheat. All of those are really important lessons for life. And that can happen whether you're playing on the floor in the living room or outside with a ball. And the playfulness, and fathers will often introduce difficult topics with children, like going to bed or having to go to school and separation, with a little bit of a play or a joke. And the mothers are often angry with them for not taking this seriously. This is hard to do. And the fathers are saying, yeah, I know it's hard to do, and I'm going to soften it a little bit here. So that again, think of the advantage to the child of both of these. Adolescence and limit setting. Knowing where the edge is. This is a story. I actually did some interesting work in the Middle East with some Arab families. One father, a group of men, one of the father told this story about how he would get home at the end of the day and he would sit down on the floor with his son, and his son, who was a toddler at the time, came over and would play with him and started to play rougher and rougher because the father kind of liked it rougher and rougher until the child got a hold of the father's beard, which was about 2 feet long, and started to pull on it and pull hard. And the father said, ouch, that hurts, you can't do that. And so he put the child over a little bit to the side. We can play, but you can't hurt me. The toddler, being a toddler, of course, saw that as an invitation to up the game. So he came back, and this time he had both hands full of hair and pulled as hard as he possibly could, and the father yelled and pushed the child away. And the child started to cry and said, we can play, but you cannot hurt me. That's the edge. That's the limit. That's as far as you can go. I want you learning it from me, not the Arizona State Police, where the edge is. And that's often, women often get angry with fathers for being arbitrary about that. But that's, you know, you look at the number of fatherless kids who are in your prisons, and the incarceration rates are astonishing. I want to show you a little video again, this time about fathers and the management of novelty. Part of what you'll see dads doing is introducing their children to things that are less familiar than the mother. Mother's often looking for comfort. I've seen this, checked it out, it's all fine. Children will often turn to fathers. They'll crawl over to the dad to have a little roughhouse. Because the father's okay with using his body as a jungle gym. The mother, no thanks, you've already used my body. You can go play with, if you need to play with a body, play with his, not mine. And the fathers often actually appreciate and enjoy it because skin-to-skin contact with your children actually leads to oxytocin secretion. Slightly irrelevant fact, if a newborn baby is laid on the father's chest for at least an hour within the first 5 hours of life, that child will sleep better and cry less by the time they go home from the hospital. I see a lot of nodding heads. Why didn't we do that? Or let's make sure we do that the next one. Or I'm going to tell my pregnant sister right as soon as the conference is over. There's something that's transmitted between the father and the baby. The oxytocin levels are very high in the father. There is something about the fact that the baby is on the father's skin, but the baby's not looking for breast milk the way the baby would be if the baby was on the mother. And so heart rate, respirations, and we're just in. And you talk to men who have this experience, they say, it changed my life. I began to feel like I really mattered to this baby. So smart, so simple, so cheap. And what an intervention. Sorry, I got carried away. So, fathers and novelty management. This is a video I want to show you. Let's see if...
So Harper, do you want to go out in the rain? Do we go out in the rain? All right, here we go. Here we go. Oh no, we're getting away! Oh no! We're getting away! Oh, more? You want more rain? Okay, one more time. Here we go. Ready? Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. Gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Oh, you're great.
Okay. So who do you think videotaped it? So the mother was taking delight in what was happening. And as you watch the father is overdoing it at the beginning, and then he gradually cuts it back down, and the child's excitement begins to grow. And so it's the child's excitement and delight that eventually drives the interaction. But the father had to pump, had to pump the engine a little bit to get it going. But he read that child's face. That's one of the things I love about it. You see that little girl's eyes get bigger and bigger as she points, and he says, do you want to do it again? And then she points, and he waits a tick before he takes her because he knows she's not quite ready, But then she moves with her body and they both go out together, and then he increases it. He puts her down in the water. She gets wet. The mother's sitting there thinking, oh my God, we're going to have to wash those clothes now. But the baby and the father have just discovered something that really is important to the two of them. And if she's smart, she won't complain about it. Because you know what that'll do? He'll do it more until eventually he wants to take her on his own. And the mother gets a break. I mean, it's a smart thing. Okay. Any observations, others that you want to share? It's pretty self-explanatory. Child outcomes of involved fathering. This is the most important slide I'm going to show you all day, because this is the bottom line to me, and it's the bottom line to many people in this room. I'm glad dads are involved, and I'm glad they're happy about it. But if it doesn't change the well-being of the child, I'm interested. The proof of the pudding. Yes, I'm at a big fancy research institution, but I also was never in full-time academics. I always had a practice, and I was always working with families. That kept my feet on the ground and kept me really interested in this, in pulling together the 300 studies that this list is drawn from. Reduce contact with juvenile authorities. We've already talked about that with the knowing where the line is. Delay in initial sexual activity. When you know you're loved, you're not going to be looking for love in all the wrong places. You're going to have some time and make some choices. Your body is important. It's been treasured by two people already. Be careful before you give it away. Less reliance on aggressive conflict resolution. Children who are raised in engaged fathering homes are themselves less violent. They are less aggressive. If they're, one of the things about spanking is that it works for about 30 seconds. And then sadly, it creates a child who not only has lost respect for you because you couldn't control yourself, you had a temper tantrum and you beat me, but it also takes away it also teaches the child, oh, violence works. All you got to do is pound on somebody and it'll change their behavior. That's the problem with spanking. And it just is, I'm not here to condemn people who do it. I'm here to inform people it has an effect. And you can make your own decisions about it. Because if you have two people in your life teaching you how to solve problems, one based on emotional intelligence and the other based on get ready for the real world intelligence, you're going to have a repertoire of problem-solving skills that's bigger than a weapon. Educational outcomes. Higher grade completion and income. The race to the top did not have that outcome, and neither did George Bush's educational programs have those outcomes. They wanted them, they didn't get them. This father engagement gives you what you want. Math competence in girls. This is a little surprising, but it came from an observation by a psychiatrist who was working with the first female classmates at MIT back in the late 70s, where she interviewed all 470 of these girls and found that the preponderance of these girls had highly engaged fathers. And they were not all nuclear physicists. Some of them were driving buses for the MTA. And there seemed to be something that she posited, that when a father is really interested in his girl beyond his being his little princess, but she has a mind and a brain, and she's got substance, and she's going to be okay, and she's a delight in my life, that kind of relationship gives you confidence to wander into places that you may not necessarily belong, like a math classroom, and succeed. Verbal strengths in boys and girls. This is a surprise, because men don't talk, right? They certainly don't talk as much as women do with their children or with other people. So what is it that is leading to this verbal strengths in both boys and girls? And if you want to raise literacy rates, engaged dads is another really wonderful way to do it. I think it has to do with feeling valued by someone who listens to you. If you're listened to, you're going to talk more because it's fun and when you get understood and you're known. Emotional outcomes, greater problem-solving competence, we've already talked about that, and stress tolerance, they can handle more. The father's teaching the child how to manage the frustration of not being able to tie their shoes but still need to get in the car and go to school. Or the father who says, you can handle that dog even though it's a little scary. And the dog sniffs the child and the child is a little skittish and the father pets the dog and then the kid pets the dog and then it's mastered right there. Frustration, mother wouldn't take that chance in some situations. Greater empathy and moral sensitivity. Big one, really big one. Reduction in violence. If you have been appreciated by someone who's both mothered you and fathered you, then your appreciation for other people's experience is likely to be larger. So, and most of these outcomes are observed in children in the middle of their adolescence. So this isn't just, you know, babies who laid on their father's chest outcomes. This is engaged fathering as rated by the families that were investigated, not by outsiders, but by the families that were investigated. Okay, any questions about this slide because it's so important? Anything you'd add? Anything you have trouble processing?
One question that came in was on spanking. If spanking is okay, is spanking okay?
I addressed that matter.
Okay.
Did I not? I'll do it again. Spanking works for about 30 seconds. The problem is that you have created a child who is now aware that you can lose your temper and beat them, and that violence solves problems. So it goes exactly against the intent of what you're trying to do, which is to get a child to behave. It reverses exactly everything you're trying to do. My loving and wonderful Baptist minister dad spanked me about 2 or 3 times in the course of my life. It didn't damage me, but it lowered my enormous respect and hero worship for him a few notches. And it went back up there, but it was a tough time for me to sort of figure it out. And I wanted to talk to my mother about it. And she didn't want to talk to me about it because she didn't agree with it.
Another question was on the pandemic. If pandemic dads behave differently, did that change the way they behave with children?
How much time have I got, Marion?
Well, I'll tell you what we'll do.
That's a great question.
That's a great question. So we want to give you time. So let's take a 10-minute break, keep that question on hold, and then come back and hit that question.
That's a great idea. 10 minutes. I'm going to be back here talking.
I'm a dad. How could it be better?
Yeah. So a couple of questions came in during the break. One was about the pandemic and fathering. And there's some interesting research that I think might be a little surprising to you, done by the National Fatherhood Institute that sent out surveys to 3,000 homes across the country, asking mothers and fathers to sort of rate what had happened to them in the first year of the pandemic. We didn't know it was the first year, but it was after 12 months. So we're talking March of 2021. And both the fathers and the mothers rated paternal engagement as increasing in educational input, teaching the children when they were home and learning school and remotely learning, which was a devastating thing, by the way, for our children. I we could spend the next hour talking about it, but you're not here to hear that. But the increase in paternal engagement was something that the fathers not only enjoyed, but don't want to give up when the pandemic was over. The mothers were very happy to have it, but they felt somewhat competitive because the children were so interested in having the dad around, particularly school-age children, because often these fathers were absent during the day because of work. So being home alone led to some interesting changes in the family dynamics, so that the mother was having to deal with face-to-face engagement between the child and the father was having to deal with the differences between what he was doing and what the mother was doing. But they all related it as a positive experience, although for slightly different reasons. So I think the pandemic changed an awful lot of things. I don't know how long, I don't know what the durability of those changes will be. But I do think the pandemic, we're now aware of there was a lot of hope. I just wrote a blog for Psychology Today called "Has Resilience Arrived at Your Home Yet?" Because resilience has been oversold as an idea by everybody who hoped that our children would not be damaged by the pandemic. And resilience is not a character trait. It's not anything that it's a context in which the child is living and failing and learning and succeeding. It's all the things around. It's not simply in the child. It's talked about that way most of the time, but it's an incorrect use of the term. So I'm thinking that your question about the pandemic fathers, I'm sure if we had enough time, I'd love to hear from some of you in this room about how the pandemic changed your fathering. Maybe let's take a comment about that if we've got a microphone. You look ready to talk.
Okay. So I'm a single dad. It was weird, but you know, I'm big on education, and I talk about this with my daughter all the time. And it's not just my daughter graduates high school; she has to graduate college. And this is what I teach my daughter about education. So it's a given she's going to college, but during the pandemic, I had to focus on what I was doing with her, like, you know, math homework, reading, writing. I had to focus on that and help her with that because teachers did not do that. I just recently had a parent-teacher conference now that they're back in school and everything. My daughter's advanced 4th grade. She's not behind. She's in the top 3% of her class, whereas the rest of the kids are like a grade behind. My daughter's advanced, so participating in her education and doing math and reading with her really helped a lot.
Did it change you?
I'm dedicated no matter what. And so whatever it takes, I'm there with my daughter. And I love that point. Fathers don't mother and mothers don't father. You're absolutely correct on that 100%. And it just made me more focused. And I knew that when the social aspect was removed from my daughter, that I had to go look for other avenues for my daughter to get out to a playground when nobody was there, you know, take her different places, go driving, stimulate her mind, you know. That was my conviction. I didn't want her to sit there and do nothing during this pandemic, and it just seemed too dark for my child.
You can't see the big smile on his face, but he was talking about focus. And I heard that from many men who said, you know, I've underestimated what I have to give to my family. I heard that over and over again from men in the pandemic. Any other testimonials or witness that you want to give to what it was like during the pandemic for you as a dad? Sorry?
That turn around, face the camera.
Yeah, there's a camera there. All these handsome, wonderful people here.
Okay, great. For me, the pandemic showed me how much I wasn't present in my family, in my life. Where I live in Santan Valley, and I worked in Scottsdale, so that's 2 hours out of the day I was wasting just to go to my job. So by the time I get home, it was already 7 to 8 o'clock, and it was time for my children to get ready for bed. So there's all that time when they get home from 3, I didn't know what they did. You know, from 3, I was here like I was here all day, and I had to do this, and it's like, oh my goodness. But from being at home, I was able to open the door when my children got home. And to see their face and see how they missed me, it just brought more joy to myself. And I was able to sit down with them and for the first time do homework assignments and see the things that I thought they were excelling in, they really weren't. You know, their handwriting was not over the lines, out the lines. You know, the homework assignments, it was just marked wrong, but they didn't know what was wrong. So it gave me time to be more present in my children's life. And then they got a chance to see what I do. Instead of just knowing that dad went to work and he's gone for a couple of hours, my son was able to walk into the next door and say, hey, Dad, well, what do you do at your job? I always know that you're gone, but I don't know what you do. And one thing that kind of got to me was he's like, well, I want to do what you do. And it's like, no, son, this is just what I do for work. This is not really what you want to do. And so from there, I was able to work with him and ask him questions of things that he wanted to do. And since we got time to spend more time together, he saw how I'm speaking more. This is what I do outside of my job, and this is how I'm transitioning after I leave from my job. And so now we have a much more better connection, and he wants to follow in my footsteps of being a speaker. So that's one thing for me that I learned from the pandemic is just being more present and getting my priorities in order, because I was so dedicated to the work, but the work I needed to be dedicated to was inside my home.
Wonderful description, but you left something out. What was the impact of that change on you?
Well, the impact of the change on me is I just wasn't aware. I was not aware. I was just going through the rat race every single day, not aware of my impact on my family. So that completely changed everything. I changed my schedule. I got a schedule that works with my children's schedule. I work first thing in the morning, and I'm off at 2:30, and I'm able to go ahead and open the door. I'm able to start homework with my children. So that's the impact of the change.
One more try. What happened to you emotionally?
Yeah, well, emotionally, I was connected. There was a big disconnect with my children because when they got home, they were so tired, and didn't have a chance to ask them questions. But since I asked them questions, I got a chance to learn more about my children, and it just took me back to my dad not being there asking me these questions when I got home from school, you know. And I definitely wanted to be there more for my children, and this was a complete eye-opener for me. I actually asked my son about the pandemic, and he said that, you know, I always do evaluation because I'm always running up for Dad of the Year. So I always check with my kids and see, hey, how I'm doing. And we talked about the pandemic, and we actually lost a family member during that time. And, you know, he was definitely sad about it, but the thing that he brought up to me is that, you know, with the pandemic, we're able to spend more time together, and that's what I wanted from you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for working with me on it. Got me back to thinking about how my dad had not done that for me. So many of us are in this room thinking about this issue because of the experiences we had with our own fathers, positive and negative. Some of us want to fix those, some of us want to recreate them, but they are a powerful part of what motivates each and every one of you. And we're going to talk about that motivation when we talk about why it's hard to get men to come to our programs.
And Dr. Pruett, can I add to that? Sure. Because I think you hit upon it, and Thurston definitely hit upon it. And this is something that we deal with the Men in the Nurturing Fathers program, is identifying and knowing what the father wound is. Because every one of us in this room, whether you, mom, dad, male, female, every one of us has a father wound. we as fathers, as we're raising our kids, we don't have a manual. We don't always do everything right. And so there are times where we do leave a wound. A lot of men are dealing with issues now in their own relationships or raising their own kids that goes all the way back to the father wound. And that father wound is manifested inside of you as what we call the little boy within. And it's that father wound that causes the little boy within to come up, and then that little boy within seeks whatever it is that they didn't get as a result of that father wound.
And as you all know, little boys can be real hell raisers. There was another question that came during.
So the other question had to do with, we see mass shootings taking place at just a phenomenal rate across our country. When you look at the number of mass shootings, you see that the bulk of them, about 99%, are boys or men. For whatever reason, coping skills just not there, and they take it upon doing harm to others. But the other thing is that the bulk of them, another 99%, fathers are not present. So it's the impact that fathers have, which I call the influence, impact, or injury, and this is an injury, the impact that fathers have. It's like, what can we do? I mean, we talk about it from and I don't want to get into the politics of it, that's not what I want to do, but we have to address this issue in the country, and part of it is related to fatherlessness.
Marion, he got a smile on his face. He promised he wouldn't get into politics, and he just said he wasn't, but he just did. This is a deeply rooted American problem related to our belief about personal choice and freedoms and weapon ownership, and our dependence on a kind of masculine uber presence that's full of pride and pomposity, and my power is better than your power. I was speaking with a woman who came up and works with child abuse cases and said, the problem with our boys is that they're so silent they cannot talk about what has occurred to them. And the baggage, the tonnage of pride sitting on those boys' shoulders is what is keeping them silent. So you've got boys who are feeling incredibly emasculated. I don't have my cell phone with me, but that's one of the things that's emasculating them, and social media. And they can choose the most toxic communication pattern. You would not dream of the things that many of these boys are feeding themselves in terms of information. I see it partly because I've had to evaluate some of the programs that are not really stemming the tide of mass shootings. But it's an American problem. It's not an international problem. And it's tied to a lot of choices that we've made based on personal freedom, and our children are paying the price for those choices. And the solution isn't just political, but it's partly political. And we're not upset enough as a nation about it. We're just not. The American Academy of Pediatrics wants pediatricians to start asking if there is a gun in the home. Some people are saying that's an outrageous intrusion on my rights. Well, the fact that there's a gun in the home raises the chance that somebody's going to die by that weapon significantly. It's my job as a pediatrician to ask, is there somebody in the home with a chronic illness or an infection or tuberculosis or something like that, because that raises the risk for everybody. Gun ownership raises the risk for everybody. So it is I'm deeply ashamed, frankly, when I go to other countries and they say, why can't you get a hold of this? You're one of the greatest countries ever. Why can't you get a hold of it? And I just sit there and I say, I can't do it myself. Got some ideas. But I think greater problem-solving competence and stress tolerance, you know, if you can't think of anything, if the only way you think you can control my behavior is by spanking me or beating me, you're not a very smart parent. You know, you got to come up with some other kind of a solution. And shame is a great one. Disappointment, more powerful than any spanking a child will ever get. You have huge tools. And the use of those tools avoids the humiliation of a child by beating them. And a lot of those boys got themselves armed because they were feeling so powerless. And many of them had been beaten and humiliated in their childhood. In this tragic tale of this 16-year-old who wandered into, I think it was Milwaukee, and wound up killing somebody. The last thing he had on his mind was he was going to go there and just be part of the movement. That's what he wanted to do, wanted to belong. And wound up doing some things that he would never in a million years have done if he hadn't gone. So I don't want to, that's as much as I can say about it, but I want us all upset about it. I want us worried and concerned about it. Because when my children look at me, I have a 50-year-old, a 49-year-old, a 23, and a 21-year-old. And when they say, Dad, are you going to, you know, they know I speak a lot, and they said, are you going to talk about the gun stuff, Dad? And I said, no, probably won't. But it came up, it belongs here, and it belongs in this discussion. So I've said what I can say about it. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. So, child outcomes of involved fathering. What about adult male outcomes of involved fathering? You know, remember the triangle?
Hey, Dr. Pruett, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think this is a really important dynamic for you and I to share, you as a physician and me as a pharmacist. And I don't want it to be political either, but I think that we need to make it that way because you and I are responsible for taking care of America. And when we talk about why men and young boys die as a result of gun violence, some of that is suicide. And asking why or if there's a gun in the home is important from that aspect because we have to take care of patients. And I wanted to tell a story about how COVID impacted me as a father from that standpoint.
Sure.
We work in healthcare, so we're essential. So I had to turn sometimes a blind eye to the politics that were happening during COVID because when George Floyd was killed, I still had to go to work and be a pharmacist. And when I was driving home from Scottsdale where I work, I told my wife, hey, do you want pad thai? And I didn't know that pad thai could get socio-political, but it did. I went downtown to a restaurant that was still open because they were essential workers as well. And my voice is quivering because I'm worried about my son, but I'm worried about being a pharmacist too and taking care of America. So I was fearful because I had to interact with a dangerous disease every day and interact with my son and my wife in that capacity. And I also had to do that while being a black practitioner. So when I went to get pad thai, I walked out of the restaurant and I happened upon the protest that I wasn't expecting. And I saw people, banners and bullhorns, just like I saw on CNN. And walking noodles, and I get to my car, and I'm shocked like I am now. I'm saying, what's happening in America today? Like, is this really what society is? So when I get to my car in downtown Phoenix, I'm driving back towards my home, and when I get to the avenues on Washington, I see the police with riot gear. I've never seen police unified in that fashion to uphold order. You know, and the protesters I saw, they were multicultural from all aspects of society, like my patients are. But then I saw a band of vehicles that had Confederate flags in Phoenix, Arizona. And we're not in the Deep South. I never thought that I would see that in the community I grew up in. And when Thurston talked about how he felt as a dad, I felt fear because I had pad thai that was getting cold, and I didn't want my wife to be pissed. But I was also fearful because I had to get home and teach my son how to interact with those emotions should he ever experience that in this city. And I don't know if any other dads have felt emotions like that, but I think it's important that our kids, especially our young boys, see us grapple with fear and how to still go do our jobs the next day.
Thank you for that. How are we going to do our jobs the next day after we see something like that and are part of it and feel so much fear? And as dads, remember the slide about engaged fathering, the responsibility that many men feel about how to manage that fear and what to do with it? You're giving your son an incredible gift by being thoughtful about it rather than denying it, or than saying, yeah, I wasn't scared, which is what an awful lot of men would have done in a situation like that. And would have been, come home, I know, I got it, it's okay, it's all right. Missing a chance to sort of say, son, I have to prepare you for a world out there that may not always be as welcoming to you as we are in your family. So thank you for your story. Maybe one more question. Marion, we need a microphone. Sorry.
Mic check, mic check. So on that same protest that you were talking about, my daughter was at Betty Fairfax, a senior. She was 18 and biracial. Her mom's black and I'm Puerto Rican. And she said, I'm going to go because you taught me to advocate and defend. And I said, all right, we go together. And it was funny because her maternal side of the family said, don't go, it's too scary. And then her oldest sister, who's a clinical social worker, said, let's all go together. So I think that by me going with them, they felt secure. But when they got there, they're like, uh-oh, this is more than I thought it was going to be about. But they knew that they were protected. I said, if you want to fight and champion for something, I'm always going to be with you. No matter what decision, but I think that that shift in the paradigm also brought up, and I don't know if the children are still suffering from depression, but that isolation, that fear, that whole combustion in 2020 just has, I think, stayed with like a residual effect all the way through now and probably will for the next few years.
I imagine the effect on your children of your being at their side and being a little afraid with them and yet knowing what to do and how to stay on the safe side of that as long as it was in your power to do so. If you wonder if depression and anxiety are still lingering, you can ask your pharmacist colleague over at the back of the room how much he's dispensing of SSRIs and anxiolytics, and through the roof, right? Yeah. Yeah, wow. Okay, thank you. Really important to hear where the rubber meets the road on this issue about helping your children manage their fears and their frustrations and where the lines are. I know many women who would be just as courageous in the doing of it, but I'm simply talking about trends here, not related to gender, but related to cultural roles. Adult male outcomes have involved fathering. This, remember the arrow goes both ways, the child effect. What happens to men? They live longer. I know it doesn't feel that way when you're doing it, but you actually do live longer than men who do not have children. The marriages last longer. That can be tough because co-parenting is a tremendous stress on a marriage. And often ends them when no one had intended for that to occur. Level of health. Men actually who are fathers actually are healthier than men who are not. And they tend to, maybe because they've sold their motorcycles, I don't know. But they tend to be less accident prone And your insurance companies make money off of you when you conceive a child. You don't get a break, but they love it. Responsibility for relationships. We hear this from many women who say, you know, when we had our kid, he suddenly became aware of me as an emotional person. Decreased accidental death. Again, risk-taking goes down when you become a father. Suicide, job changes go down. Aggression and impulsivity also go down. So we're not just simply talking about increased outcomes for children that are good. We're also talking about the ones for males. But there are a lot of risks to fathering, a lot. Most men would say the most important job I have in the world is to provide for my family when they're fathers. And so when they lose their jobs, their self-esteem is in the toilet. When a woman loses her job, she may be a little scared, but she doesn't feel like a failed mom the way that men do. So this is a very important part, by the way, of sort of job counseling, and why if you're going to look after the needs of dads, this has to be part. It isn't part generally of working with mothers. It is working with dads. Inexperience. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't belong here. My dad never changed my diaper. I don't intend to. And once again, the missed opportunity of that kind of isolation. Exclusion from the child's life, either through divorce, gatekeeping, we'll talk about that in a minute, but the institutional exclusions, which I want you to start thinking about, the childcare settings, health settings, educational settings that are not father-friendly. Most of them are not. Now, I'm with a pretty hip group in this room that have made some changes in that direction, and so you're used to these inclusions, but you're the exception, you're not the rule. Gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is a concept that we started using about 30 years ago. Well, longer than that. It was after the women's movement really was thoroughly ensconced in our everyday life, where the mother who has the baby in her body owns the child and keeps the child in her garden, figuratively speaking, and locks the gate and opens the door to anybody to be in the child's life with her, but it's her choice. So gatekeeping can be negative and it could be positive. The positive can be, I really want to have a child with you, let's raise it together. I see things in you and you see things in me, let's do this together and have it work out. Versus, my dad was not in my life, I'm just fine, I don't need you in my child's life. It's hard enough to do it on my own. That's gatekeeping. Another risk to fatherhood, work-family stress transcends gender, especially for men. Men are more likely to take home their work stress than women when they are parenting. Interesting, because they're not very good at dealing with it at work, I guess. Single best predictor of father involvement. It's not money. It's not family history. It's none of those things. The quality of his relationship with the mother of the child. In other words, if she thinks it's a good idea, he has a chance of being a very involved father. And that is true whether we're talking a married couple, single parent, divorced, high, low income, white, non-white families. So women have tremendous power. That gatekeeping is in your hands culturally. And what you decide to do with it will have a lot to do with whether your child enjoys the outcomes. So why don't dads come? Barriers to father involvement, the lack of father friendliness in family serving agencies. This is quite a blanket statement, I understand. I'm going to stand behind it here in a minute. A lot of family serving agencies are staffed by women. Many of those women have had negative experiences with men in their lives. And to expand services from the mothers they're working with to fathers doesn't seem like a really good idea to them, because they often feel like they're not serving the mothers well enough anyway. So why would you add dads to this pot? okay? That's a very common feeling in home visiting programs, early intervention programs, even healthcare settings. So be it, but you have to ignore what you now know about the outcomes for children of engaged fathering. And by not making your institution father-friendly, you are automatically excluding the families from these really wonderful outcomes to which they are likely to partake. If you go to the extra half a mile, it's not even a mile, it's about a half a mile to make yourself a father-friendly institution. And many of you, I don't know if any of you have been through a transition like that, where your director came in and said, we've got to start dealing with dads. Okay, let's hire a dad specialist and give him an office and keep him down at the end of the hall. He can do, okay, so we're engaging fathers. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. Classic example of that intervention was the responsible fatherhood funding that came out of previous administrations. Millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars spent on increasing responsible fatherhood. The outcome studies from each of those studies, from whether it's Oklahoma, Texas, Massachusetts, extremely disappointing. Nothing had changed for those men 6 months after the intervention. Why? They didn't engage the mothers. They didn't engage the co-parents. So you can shake a dad all you want to be different and to change. But unless you help him deal with the change in him in the relationship that he is sharing to raise that baby, it will go poof in the night. It'll be gone. One of the studies I'm going to share with you in a minute that shows the power of co-parenting engagement for fathers is the Supporting Father Involvement Project, which I'll describe in a second, that I've been involved in. Well, I'm already in it now, so why not just tell you about it? Actually, I'm going to hold off. If you can allow me to stay with this focus on barriers to father involvement. Personal barriers, mental health issues. I'm so depressed, or psychotic, substance abuse, incarceration, the hugest one. Intergenerational issues around fathering, and I'm simply not ready to be a parent. Those are the personal barriers. Familial barriers, geographic separations, domestic violence, maternal gatekeeping. Obviously, if you're going to do any kind of a father engagement program, you have to make sure the child is safe. That is the bottom line. You start there all the time. Don't engage a father who is dangerous to the children. Get him fixed, get him treatment, and then bring him back. But dangerous men are not to be encouraged by our institutions to be near their children. They need treatment and they need help, maybe brief incarceration. I don't know what they need, but they need to be away from the child and the child needs to be protected. So I want to be very clear about that. When I'm talking about paternal engagement programs, I am saying domestic violence, as common as it is, you can't ignore it. When it shows up in your clinic, you got to refer him, and you've got to refer him to a program that's likely to be helpful. But keep your door open and say, come back in a year, and we'll see where you are, because we don't want to shut the door against your own aspirations. Domestic violence. It is very common to simply think of domestic violence as something perpetrated by men on women. The most violent forms, that is true. But the most common forms, it is not true. And the kind of interpersonal violence that women perpetrate tends not to be as dangerous, but it also tends to be more frequent, and it also tends to have also extremely negative effects on the family, and particularly on child development. The slapping, the hitting, the door slamming, the shoving, the kicking out of the house, that kind of interpersonal and relationship violence is much more common than the more serious. So I want you to think about domestic violence in a more nuanced way than we typically have. Because if you're only looking for men, you're going to miss all the women who also need your help and treatment in managing that kind of behavior. And screaming, harder for some men than others, but yeah, screaming. Violent problem solving is generally the way that that's managed, talked about, categorized. Organizational barriers, lack of father friendliness, the physical environment. When I was having my first child, well, two things. I just finished my internship at a teaching hospital in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And in that teaching internship, I'd probably delivered about 8 or 9 babies, and I was pretty good at it. When my wife became pregnant and we wanted to have this baby born at this hospital, which was close to our home, I was told by the nurse I would need a signed document from the head of OBGYN for me to be present in the room when my child was born. And I said, Rebecca, this is the same room where you and I have delivered babies together. What's so special about this? And she looked at me and she said, we're afraid you're going to pass out. I was so enraged. Maybe that's where my work began here. That just really, really enraged me. I felt so demeaned and dismissed, and I began to really sort of wonder about the institutional barriers to my being involved. So I went and got the signature, and I was there anyway. But that's not where it stopped. I then began to, when I'd gone to the prenatal classes, I was the only man in the prenatal classes, and I asked why. And the head of the class said, well, the other men don't want to come. And I looked at her and I said, how do you know that? And she said, well, that's what their wives tell me. Bingo, gatekeeping at an institutional level and at a personal level. That, by the way, was a long time ago. That is happening less frequently now than it was in the 1970s when I was becoming a dad for the first time. So, how do you make a father-friendly place look father-friendly? What's the artwork on the wall? Is it all lovely breastfeeding pictures? Is there anything having to do with remotely interesting to a man? Are all the magazines, HGTV, House and Garden? Is there an Argosy or a car? Is there anything to draw a man into this and say, you're welcome here? Are the seats big enough for him? If he doesn't show up for a critical prenatal visit, do you reschedule the visit? Or do you say, well, just go ahead without him? If you go ahead without him, you've started a roll. You started a path down a row of exclusion and marginalization. If you hold the line and say, we'll reschedule, it's really important that he's there. What a message to the mother, and what a message to him. We need you here. We need you here. Your child needs you here. You need to be here. Hours of operation. How do you make well, before COVID, when most men were at work during the day, do you have any evening hours? Oh no, the staff won't come. Yeah, the staff will come if you ask them and if you tell them why it's important and you pay them. Lack of male staff members. That can be an inhibition because it's helpful to men to see other men. Even one child care setting had a male bus driver, and their paternal engagement was 3 times what the one down the street was, who had no men in sight. Exclusive commitment to mothers is obviously a problem for institutional father-friendliness. Societal barriers, punitive child support policies, and policy disincentives. Lack of males in social services, staffing, and administration. Support often inadvertent of maternal gatekeeping and social science and health delivery systems that are focused exclusively on mothers. To this day, let's see, my student did this survey just 3 months ago. 72% of all the papers in child development and also the journals of pediatrics that say family in the title have no information about the father. Not his age, not whether he exists, or whether, it's just nothing. So we're pretending that we're family focused, and we are not, even in the science. It used to be worse. It used to be 94%. Now it's 70, making progress, 37 years, Neil, between still phase studies. Okay. Co-parenting. My own work has evolved from fathering encouragement to how the fathering competence demonstrates itself in a relationship, the relationship between the people that are raising this baby, raising this child. And there are some shared themes between moms and dads when they feel when they're trying to think about how they want to co-parent. The impact on early experiences can last a lifetime. We've gotten that message through to young families. And it scared the bejesus out of them because they're afraid of doing things wrong. And we've got to figure out a different way to get that message through. It motivates them, yet it also scares them that everything feels so incredibly determined. Perfect parenting is a myth, as you all know. We learn best from our mistakes, not our successes. We get into learning loops and the redo. We're going to try again to have a different outcome when we fight with our child about what they're eating. We're going to have to learn about getting them to bed and do it in a different way so that we have more success. Those learning loops go on all the time, and both mothers and fathers describe the same process. They may give it a different name. Shaping the parenting to the child, not vice versa. Those of you graduate students that don't have kids yet are great believers in the power of the environment. They think, everything comes from the environment. Once they have a kid, they then are great believers in genetics because they realize that what I'm doing is not quite having the desired effect on my child. Maybe I need to think about this a little differently. Struggle with setting limits, both parents in co-parenting, with respect, not fear, especially tough for millennials. Because a lot of millennials want to be friends with their children. They say it very explicitly. I just want to be their best friend. I see a lot of laughter going on here. Well, good luck to them. It's not working. I hate to tell them. Not working, because there are limits that you have to set that do not feel very friendly to your children, but have everything to do with their well-being. This is not a popularity contest. It's a survival, and it's a survival of the values that you have, and that you've raised yourself, and that you've raised, or hopefully raising them with. When your child finds and pushes your buttons, which they always do, the intense emotional baggage that is stirred up within a mother and a father, and their respect for that is very important. Strong commitment, particularly ideologically, to co-parenting. That has been growing in the 40, 50 years that I've been studying this, and it's very interesting to see. I teach a child development course at the college where I teach, and 30 years ago when I started teaching it, it was only girls. Now it's half and half, and I hear these young women saying, I think it's incredibly attractive to have a man who wants to share parenting with me. It's a real turn on to me. I did not hear that language 30 years ago. I'm hearing it now, and the men are kind of all a little surprised. Some of them are smiling. They're in that room, so they're interested in child development too. So I feel hopeful. I feel hopeful that we are moving in directions that are going to make it easier for dads to be engaged with the well-being of their children. Okay, last piece of science I want to leave you with. This was a project that was funded and conceived by the Office of Child Abuse Prevention in California. They came to me, my wife Marcia, who's a wonderful researcher. I'm a pretty good idea guy. I'm not a real lousy researcher. I'm not disciplined enough. She is, and two of our colleagues from California. And they said, we have spent $37 million on the reduction of child abuse and neglect over the last 20 years on projects to see what we could change. And we haven't changed the training of one welfare worker based on that research. We're missing something. We think maybe it has to do with paternal engagement. Why don't you folks design a project for us and we'll stick with you. And by God, they did. Through the Schwarzenegger administration, yet they stuck with us. Wound up spending $12 million, 1,100 families, Mexican Americans. There were some indigenous families from Northern California, black families, white families, mostly working class. Many were migrant workers in the fields in California. The research designed, we had an intervention, identical intervention done in groups with a male-female pair, fathers only, with an emphasis on some mothering. Mothers were involved in one of the 16-week sessions, compared exactly same leaders and everything else with a couples group that was not fathers only, that was also focused on and we provided childcare, there was a meal, there was case management. To cut through the chase, and here's, if you are really interested, the website describing this. And this has been described as the gold standard of paternal engagement research in the country. And I'm very proud to have been part of it. And it's now spread to China, England, Europe. What we found was that the fathers-only groups had good outcomes, but they did not last as long as the couples groups, which lasted years after the intervention. Children's grades were better, violent problem solving went down, mothers and fathers got less depressed, substance abuse went down in both men and women. We even had a version of this that was done to protective service families because California wanted to know, would it work with people who are really in trouble? And the answer is it really works with people who are in trouble. We actually hired a domestic violence expert to be on call for that particular cohort, and she was never called. And it just shows you that when you can really meet a family around the needs of its children, focus on co-parenting, bring fathers in positively, help mothers not gatekeep in such a toxic way, you can make tremendous progress. And these families, we were watching these families to see if any of them were ever reported again for to the state for abuse or neglect. And of the 1,100 plus families, there were 3 families that were reported again. So I share this science with you because if you get you're really uncertain whether or not it's worth the time and trouble, the testimonials from these families would warm your heart and bring you to tears, because many of the families came to this and they were ready to fall apart. They were under tremendous pressure, et cetera, et cetera. Question, yeah?
Yeah, the 3 that returned to abuse, were they from the group that only had the dads involved? Or do you know that?
We don't know that. They limited privacy protections are very important in this kind of research, and so we did not know where they came from. But 3 out of 1,100, doesn't even reach a rounding error. I'm sorry for those families, but we were thinking maybe a quarter would come back. Didn't happen.
One more question?
Yeah.
If I could. I'm kind of struggling with I've been divorced 3 years, and the malicious mother, and the maternal gatekeeper, and all that. It's kind of a struggle thing, but I'm just wondering if you have you kind of sparked my awareness that I haven't been to any co-parenting with my ex since I got the divorce papers, So, I really don't work with her much with co-parenting. It kind of opened my eyes to, if you don't try to work with your ex on co-parenting, you're gonna get more and more gatekeeping, and you'll see your kids less and less. So,
Yeah.
do you have any kind of a YouTube, maybe a 5 or 10 minute video I could send her that would help her open her eyes to the fact that if she doesn't have daddy involved, her kids are going to prison?
I think you should make that 5-minute video, man. Related to your question in the back about being the pharmacist, you had a question about being away from your child and dealing with the mother. Was that your question? And I asked you to be patient about it? Okay. Okay. So that's why I wanted to lay the groundwork for why co-parenting is, for me, the next horizon of paternal engagement. Because if we just stop with the dads, the effects are not going to make it all the way through to your offspring. So that's why I'm a big fan of this, and I really appreciate your saying what you did.
Question, does co-parenting refer to just married couples or only divorced couples or both situations?
Did you think it referred to just divorced couples in the way I was talking about it? No, it doesn't. It refers to everybody does it. It's been co-opted by the legal system with a hyphen. And I'm bringing it back. I'm detoxifying it, taking out the hyphen and saying it's where families live and how you have to co-parent together, whether you're married or not. And you're absolutely right. You will lose more and more ground if you do not get re-engaged with her. Especially if you're not re-engaged with her, guess who notices? Your child or your children. They're watching that very carefully. And if you're not willing to, put up, they're going to say, Dad's given up on us. Maybe Dad's given up on me. And so I think I don't have a 5-minute video, but there are that are designed to convince reluctant mothers. But the National Fatherhood Initiative has some great videos about co-parenting that you might want to access in FI. Yes, sir.
It's really sad, but it's great that co-parenting is really needed for families to come together for the sake of the children. But if both parents are not in agreement to co-parenting, it just will never work.
That's right. And the problem with, I don't want to end on a downer note, but the problem with concepts such as, parental alienation, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a weaponized term that has been brought to the courts and really used by very controlling spouses to eliminate the involvement of the other one. And it's a mess. And so it is a mess created by some of our own lack of vision. My wife is actually working on a reform to really eliminate parental alienation from the judicial docket, because it turns out that it's really not clinically valid as a term. But I don't want to get lost in the weeds here. When do you stop trying? is an answer a lot of men, and women, by the way, have to answer. And what I want those people to have in their heads is what do they want their kids to think of them? It's worth an awful lot of eating crow to stay involved in their lives, because they're going to come looking for you if they think you're still available. And if you're not available, if you don't keep that flag waving in the dim horizon, when the day comes when they need to change their lives, and it happens with so many of them, they won't know you. They won't know about you. They won't know where you are, and they'll have an image crafted by whatever your unhappy ex-spouse has shared with them. But if you're acting in your own interest to stay in their lives, that goes against the sort of poisoning that's going on. So I urge you to stick with it. Okay, I'm out of time. So my last slide. This slide's for mothers. Treat fathers not as helpers, but as partners. Your gold standards differ. His is probably his father. Yours, I'm not sure of. When I was talking with Marshall about her comment about men need to be a particular way, I wish she were still here because we'd dialogue a little bit more about it. The way that's presented to men can either invite them in or it can push them away. So treat fathers not as helpers, but as partners. We're in this together. Support and praise are money in the bank with men. Criticism, not so much. And by the way, praise and criticism from a man to a mother is less powerful because she thinks she's already doing a great job. When it goes the other direction, not too much laughter down here, you guys are going to get me in trouble. When it goes the other direction, it is literally money in the bank, which you can draw on later on. So praise and appreciation and support. Consider the facts and the myths of interpersonal violence. We've already talked a little bit about that. Mind the gatekeeping to promote co-parenting instead of eliminate it. And bottom line, engaging fatherings in programs. Address maternal gatekeeping, domestic and institutional. Engage positively. We've changed our hours. We put up some artwork. We got some big seats. We changed the magazines. We really mean for you to come here. And when you don't show up, we're going to call you and say, we need you here. That's father friendliness. And it can happen from the top down. But it needs a conversation before you begin it as an institution, if you haven't been this way before, because you need to respect the views of the women, often in particular, who are negative about it. They need to put their thoughts on the table, be respected about it, and see if they can work with the change. If they can't, then the administrator has some choices to make. And sometimes that's exactly what does occur. Address the father's needs. Not what you think he wants, but he needs help with job, with responsibility, his own dad, peers. How's he doing? Is he with other men that he admires who are fathering? And ask explicitly, not just through the mother, would you have your husband come next time? Could I have his cell phone number and I'll reach out to him? Well, he'll only tell you he's too busy. Gatekeeping, possibly, sometimes not. But if you are allowed in that position, whatever you're in, to make contact with him directly, men respond. How did we get so many men to be participants in supporting father involvement? Went into the community, soccer games, football games, baseball games, barbershops. Hi, we'd like you to be in this program. What do you think? And they came. I'm sorry to say that posters on buses don't work. Don't waste your money on that. It needs to be high. Give them the gift of 5, as Marvin was saying. Okay, Use local male talent, cultural competence, obviously, and don't forget prevention. Prevention. How do we get dads into the lives of their children? Parental leave, breastfeeding encouragement, depression screening. You know that if a father is involved in breastfeeding education, it's likely to be more successful. That's huge. Because a lot of dads can give negative messages about it until they understand the value to the baby and to the mother, not only about nutrition, but also relationship building. And the mother's more likely to pump if she thinks her husband will be a positive feeder with the baby. I know we've been all over the place. That's what happens when you get involved with fathering and fathers. It takes you everywhere, political, spiritual, religious, nutritional, it's everywhere. It should be. It's the way it should be. So I think we're going to have to stop. We're out of time.
No, not really.
Okay.
Online, impact of social media on fathering.
What kind of social media?
Well, you know, it's social media, so it could be anything from Facebook, TikTok, Instagram,
Yeah.
anything that they're seeing, entertainment, movie-wise. The social media and the growth of social media in this country, across the world, have an impact on men or impact on fathering. And I know with social media, one of the issues with, you know, with boys, you know, coming up into their own is the access to pornography online.
Right.
And so there's an impact there, but just your thoughts around that.
I live in a town in Western Massachusetts where the Media Education Foundation lives and works, and their work is exceptionally accurate and useful. And they have tackled the problem of the paternal image in social media. And their conclusion after, you know, looking at 2,000 hours of posts and everything that they could see on social media, that men are largely portrayed as negative, predatory, and mystical, and not seen as real providers in the real world who kind of live and bleed and cry and get hurt and succeed and fail like the rest of us. And so there are very few images available to children, particularly male children, that are not somewhere between, you know, Thor, and let's see who would be the other end of that spectrum. Somebody on Family Man be at the other end of that spectrum. So there are attempts being made by some brave groups to reverse that, and to have, there are many really supportive sites for men to get information, to 5-Minute Dad, the 15-Minute Dad. All of those actually turn out to be pretty helpful to men in the here and now. They don't have really good follow-up, but they at least keep them on the straight and narrow.
Okay, good.
Can I ask a question? Yeah, before I invest 2 hours to go to a breakout, I'm just wondering if there's any way we could have these 4 breakout people give us like a 60-second intro. Are you trying to change my agenda? Yeah, because I would really like to see if I got a good vibe with one of these 4 people.
Okay.
I would really appreciate it.
So I'm going to tell you what to do. You got your phone? Okay, there's a link in there on your phone to the program. Flap that open, and there's a synopsis of all of the sessions in there. There you go.
There's the social media impact on fathers right there. living and breathing.
Any other questions?
You know, as a result of COVID, a couple of years ago, a lot of our agencies had transitioned from face-to-face group and relationships and programming with fathers and went into virtual visits. Now that the COVID pandemic somewhat have died down, we're attempting to open the doors to having dads coming back into the offices with face-to-face services, doing home visitations. However, it's more challenging to get individuals to come back to doing face-to-face when they got so comfortable with this virtual type of program. They didn't have to worry about transportation or any of this stuff. Do anyone, or do you have any suggestions how to really re-engage individuals from the virtual back to the face-to-face type of programming?
Yeah, but let me mention something first about the pandemic's effect on one particular kind of intervention, which was home visiting, which is, by the way, I don't know if there are any home visitors here, but home visiting is notoriously impervious to paternal engagement, not necessarily on purpose, but just because they have so much to do in a short period of time. And to engage the father means that you, as a nurse practitioner or as a home visitor, think that there's something valuable in what he has to contribute, and not all of them are of that opinion. During COVID, home visiting had a bit of a revolution because it all had to be done online, and guess who was in the background? Dad. And sometimes he was hanging out there at the kitchen, sometimes he had the kid in his arms, and it was the first time for a large number of home visitors that they even encountered the father. And the fathers began to, these women had to, most of them were women, had to deal with what to do with him now. And when he did, he often introduced himself, and he would come, you know, what about me? I've got a question. I'm not sure we're doing the diapering right, or that rash is still not looking great to me, or when they began to involve. It had quite an impact on the home visitors. And they're redoing, some of them are actually redoing their protocols as a result of that experience. So that's a funny silver lining that came out of the pandemic. I think it depends on the kind of work you're doing. If the kind of work you're doing is basically advising, counseling, and giving concrete advice, that's your job, that really can be done reasonably well online. What can't be reasonably done well online are things that are more related to the kind of nonverbal messages that a client is giving you, the kind of relationship-based treatments or interventions. Those are harder to do online. And so what we're doing to get at in my clinic, where we're having the same problem, to bring people back in, is to frankly offer them incentives. And there are there's some food in one of the waiting rooms. There are also, if you come for so many, there's a gift card to either Walmart or Costco or something like that, which are small pickings. And if you make 3 times in a row, then you get one of the cards. So we're not. You have to go where people are.
Question? I see you. You have a question? Looked like you had a question. No question. All right, any other questions, comments, issues, concerns? All right, I want to thank Dr. Pruett. Come on, put your hands together and thank him with me.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate the contributions that you have. I always leave these gatherings with more information than I came with, and thank you for that. And bless this effort that you are doing. It is unique, and I love the spirit that's generated. I love to see the men that are in this room, and I know you come from a huge variety of places, and places in your own life as well as institutional places. And once more, the credit for that goes to that man. Thank you.
All right, so a couple of things before we break for lunch. This is what we want you to do. There's a lot going on in this building. Actually, there's 3 rooms that are being taken up with the conference that I think is really exciting, and it's the Conference of Internal Auditors. And so, that was a joke. And so, this is what we want you to do. We want you to, when you break, you go over, you get your food, you come back over here because we still have some things that we'll do, presentations for you during lunch that we want to put out there to you. You see things that are sitting around, that are on the stage, these things we're going to be raffling off, so they'll be going away with you. But I need you to do me a favor. So we have this ManCave bling, the swag that just came out. We got the black hats, we got the the gray hats. We've got ManCave shirts for men and ManCave shirts for both mothers and fathers. But you got to go to work. Back here in the corner, where did she go? Mahogany Zam will be back here in the corner. There she is over there, Latricia. So if you have like an aha moment that you had during this session, a comment, something that you want to comment on with regard to the session or with regard to the summit or with regard to what's happening in the next 2 days, you can say it back there. We're going to capture it because we want to be able to use it in the future, in social media and to promote the work that we're doing here in ManCave. That is the only way that you can get to any swag. Like, we'll do raffles, but I was like, yeah, no, not the little raffles. We're going to go that way with the swag. We'll have some other little raffles where you've got your raffle ticket inside of your ID badge, and you can get access to some of this. But I just want you to do me that favor because I really do want to hear from you. If there's something you think we can do better up to this point, let us know. I want to hear from you, the good, the bad, the indifferent. All right? So we're going to break for lunch, take some time, you go next door, get your food, come back here. We got more stuff for you.